at the Harrop house. We're renovating a 125-year-old farmhouse in the Kootenays in British Columbia, Canada. It's a gorgeous day here, and that's great because we've got a lot to do today. Today we are putting in new ceiling joists or floor joists for the upper floor, and there's the house in behind, you can see. So I'll go inside and we'll show you how we're going to do it. So this is inside of the main part of the house, and as you can see, we've installed a couple of beams. This is a giant beam that goes down the center of the house, so we can remove the load-bearing wall in the middle of the space. This will become the living room, and we want to be able to have it all wide open. So we've got that beam there, and then over on this side, on the outside of the house, we've also installed a large beam, and we've actually removed the entire side of the house. And that's so that we can open up the wall here and take what used to be the covered porch and turn it into the kitchen and have one big giant open space. This wall on the side here is a temporary wall because we had to cut the floor joists to install the beams. We had to cut them on both sides. And then again on the other side of the center beam, there's more floor joists that are cut way along the other side and again up against the beam on the other side here. So what we're going to do today is put new floor joists in, and using joist hangers we're going to hang them from in between the two beams on this side of the house, and on the other side over here we have a beam on this side, and on the far side we have a stud wall where the joists will sit on top of the stud wall over here. The first step in the process is going to be to measure down from the top here, because the joist has been put at the right height for where we want the floor to be. We'll measure down the distance of the 2x8, which is 7 1/4 inches. That's what we're going to be using for ceiling joists, and then we will be using joist hangers to connect them to the beam. So we'll measure down first. We'll put a mark here. We'll do the same thing at the other end, and then we will snap a chalk line all the way down, and that will give us a bottom where we can pre-hang our joist hangers so that we can slot the joist in on this side and jack it up if necessary, because the house is a little bit saggy, and so we want to make sure the floor is nice and level and even, so we may need to jack up the floor just a little bit before we attach them to the other end, so we get them all nice and level. So the floor and the ceiling is all nice and flat and nice and level. So this beam is going to be a little trickier to measure. It's actually larger than the other beam, and where the other beam sits underneath the floor, this beam actually goes higher than the floor. This one's 18 inches tall and that one's 14 inches tall. And when we installed them, we installed the bottoms of the beams both at the same height, so that when they hang down into the room, it'll look nice and uniform across the room with the two beams at the same height instead of them hanging down at different heights. So to do that, what we've had to do is place this beam higher than the floor, which means when we measure to put on the side, we're not measuring from the top of the beam. So what we're going to do to solve that problem is, instead of using a ruler to measure from the top of the beam, I've got a little piece of 2x8, and I'm just going to put it right here against the floor. I'm just going to mark right underneath it. And that'll give me the height for my string line. It's often a more accurate, faster, easier way to take your measurements to use an actual piece of your material instead of trying to figure it out with your ruler, especially because we've got a bit of a gap here. And so measuring exactly from the floor to the beam is a little bit inaccurate because I can't get it on there without having it on an angle. So a little piece of material gets me an accurate measurement. Nice and easy and quick. We'll put a nail in for the chalk line. And now what we're going to do, because we're not sure whether the floor is even at that end compared to this end, now what I'll do is I'll take a measurement from the very top of the beam, which is up above the floor, and I'll take that measurement down here, 13 3/4, and then I'll go to the other end of the beam and measure down 13 3/4, and that's where I'll run the chalk line on the other end, and then I know that my ceiling and my floor above will be parallel with the beam that has already been leveled up in the house. So I've made a jack post. I took 2 old pieces of lumber that were lying around the yard, and I made a little foot for them to spread out the weight and just nailed that on the bottom. And then up at the top I have mounted my jack, and all I did to do that was I drilled a few holes in the base of the jack, which took me a few minutes, and then they're just screwed on with some wood screws right to the top. Those aren't going to hold anything except to stop the jack from falling off the top of the post. And so I'm going to use this little 4-ton bottle jack to help raise up the beams to the right height before I nail them in. So I have most of the joists in. It all went relatively smooth. I put in the joists that went in between the old joists first, and then left a few where the new joist lined up exactly with the old one, so that I could get the floor nice and strong first, and then take out the old joist so that there was room to put the last one in. So I've got one more to put in. The process went fairly smoothly, so I'll do a little close-up now and show you how I did it. So my first step in the process is to take a short piece of 2x8 and the 2x8 joist hanger and line it up with the marks I've measured out from where the joist should be, 16 inches on center, and the chalk line that we did at the beginning. And then I'm lining it up with the bottom there, where it's supposed to be. Make sure it's kind of level and sort of lined up with the top of the beam there. And I'm getting that into place, and starting by making sure it's vertical, and then putting in a couple of nails on the joist hanger. Then I can take the block out, and now I have a place that's the right level where I can hang the end of the new joist. To hang the joist, I'm using this Bostitch strap shot. It's a specialized nail gun for hanging metal hangers and straps, and it's specialized in the way that it leaves the nail hanging just a little bit out of the front of the nail gun. Most guns don't do that, and that enables me to easily find the hole where the nail goes and put the nail in. I have measured the length that the joist needs to be, and that's 115.5 inches. I'm using the imperial system because lumber in Canada comes still measured in imperial, and the construction business in Canada seems to be one of the last holdouts that still uses the imperial system instead of the metric system. Since the lumber is measured in inches, and the house is old, and most of the things in the house have been measured or built based on imperial dimensions, that's what I'm using. I will measure out my 115 inches. I'm not using a pencil because I'm lazy, and so I'm just going to leave the ruler on here line up the saw blade until the edge of the blade. So the edge of the blade is at 115.5. Move my ruler out of the way and make the cut. Scrap goes in the scrap pile, and we're ready to go hang. So I have pre-positioned my jack stand in place here, lined up right underneath with where the joist is going to hang. So once I get the other end in the hanger, I can rest this one on top of here and get it jacked up into place. So first I need to stick the other end in the joist hanger. It's a bit tricky because I got to lift this thing up high and above my head, and it's about 10 feet long, and I got to stand about 6 or 7 feet away. So I got a kind of a long stretch to do this. Okay, there it's in. Okay, we've got it. Lined up nicely and then jacked up so it's right at the line. Okay, so now it's just a matter of sliding the joist hanger in place and throwing in a few nails on each side. Get it temporarily in place. Now I can take the jack stand out of the way, finish up nailing. Okay, so that's the story. All the joists are up. You know, it took a reasonable amount of time, but it went fairly smooth, about what I expected, maybe even better than I expected. When you're working on an old house, you always may have to move something out of the way, or build a temporary support, or take down a temporary support to support the structure while you're building what's new and will eventually hold up the house. All I have left to do now is take down a couple of these old joists that are still in the ceiling. So I'll do that, and then I'll go check and make sure that every hole and every hanger has a nail in it, to make sure that when the inspector comes, he's not upset that I missed any. And that's it for now. We have new floor joists, and now the next project will be to do the same thing on the other side of the house. Until next time, when we have different projects to show you, that's it from Harrop House. Take it easy.